Date, April 9th, 2019. Virgil sighed as he walked out of his room. He had hardly gotten any sleep, because in the dark of the night, the neon pink paint made his walls appear to be painted with blood, an unsettling sight to say the least. Just wanting some coffee to wake his mind up for the day ahead, he groggily made his way through the corridor, using a ruler to try and hit any tripwires that had been set in the night. Once again, he found that he was just overreacting when his scope yielded no results, so he continued on towards the kitchen. Taking one step towards the first floor, Anxiety had never been more thankful for his ability to teleport when his foot slipped right out from under him. Closing his eyes, he willed himself to disappear, and reappeared about 3 feet above the sofa, landing on the cushions in a less than graceful manner. Still, it was better than breaking his skull by falling down the steps, so he took a few moments to catch his breath after the adrenaline dump from his near-death experience. Once he was thinking clearly again, he moved back over to the staircase, only to find the carpet gone, and the hard wood covered in something, and judging by the smell, he guessed that it was dish soap, and every step was coated in it. He knew injury wasn't the main intent for the prank, but it was one of the most likely outcomes, making it a clear violation of the rules. Not wanting to make a big deal out of the situation, he was about to go get some paper towels to clean up the mess so no one would get hurt when he heard a door open upstairs. Glancing up, he saw a very tired Roman heading for the steps, clearly unaware of the danger. Having no time to warn him, the fight-or-flight reflex did the only thing he could think of. He teleported to the top of the stairs, took Princey's hand mere moments before he would have slipped down the stairs, and teleported them both to the commons. The two of them landed in a heap on the carpet of the living room, before promptly jumping away from one another. The creative side glared at him.
What was that for?
The darker of the two felt dizzy from 2 back-to-back teleports.
I was trying to save you from falling down the stairs.
I think you increased my chances of falling by doing that, Hot Topic.
The fanciful trait glanced over to him.
And why shouldn't you be more accurate with your freaky teleport skill?
Watch who you're calling freaky, Sir Sing-a-Lot.
Virgil took a deep breath.
It's too early to teleport.
Well, why did you need to teleport us in the first place?
Anxiety glanced back over to the passage to the second floor.
Someone covered the stairs in soap, and I almost slipped down them a few moments before you did. If I hadn't been able to teleport, well, I would have known firsthand how you felt during the sleepwalking incident.
Roman looked over to the stairs as well, his irritation shifting away from his worrisome counterpart.
Surely that violates some rule of yours.
I'm sure the sole intent wasn't injury, but I don't know who would be naive enough.
He stopped as the two of them locked eyes.
Logan would think that far ahead. Joan and Talyn can't enter the Mind Palace, and Thomas relies too much on object permanence to remove the carpet like that.
Anxiety and Princey spoke in unison.
It was Patton.
The latter looked over to him.
You feel up to another teleport yet?
He nodded, placing a hand on the shoulder of the whimsical aspect, and a moment later, the pair appeared in the second-floor corridor. Patton woke with a start as knocking echoed through his room. Putting on his glasses, he walked over to the door, which revealed a rather disheveled Roman and Virgil.
What's up, kiddos?
The fight-or-flight reflex was quick to cut to the chase.
Did you put the soap on the stairs?
Morality simply nodded.
Well, I know it wasn't your intent, but you're lucky I was the first one up, because I'm the only one who can teleport.
Why do you need to teleport?
Anxiety tilted his head to one side.
Because I would have fallen down the stairs if I couldn't.
He just barely stopped me from falling down them as well.
Roman paused for a moment.
Maybe that teleport skill is more useful than I thought.
The father figure felt his heart drop.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt.
Virgil placed a hand on his shoulder.
Thankfully, no one did. But let's go clean up that mess before someone does, because I can only handle so many teleports at one time.
The prince shot him a concerned glance.
Can you get us all to the common room safely?
He nodded.
Yes, I have enough energy left for that.
Date, April 9th, 2019.
You know I could do this myself, right?
Virgil forced himself not to roll his eyes at Roman's incessant whining. This was going to be their biggest prank yet, but if this was going to work, they needed to work together. Either way, he spoke in a whisper.
Hush, the others are gonna hear us.
But
He cut his ally off.
Which one of us wears makeup all the time?
Finally, the prince kept his mouth shut long enough for anxiety to finish off the paint in peace. After a few moments, he put his brush down.
There, I'm done.
Turning to look at himself in the mirror, the creative side took in a sharp breath.
if I didn't know what was going on, I think I'd killed someone.
He chuckled softly.
As far as the others are concerned, you did kill someone.
They shared a knowing smile, but it was the fanciful persona who spoke.
All that's left now is a bit of stage work, and we'll be ready to start.
Walking over to where the fight-or-flight reflex had set his brush down, he picked up the large bottle of fake blood that they had bought. He dripped some onto his sword, before pouring a generous amount onto the floor. After that, he proceeded to splatter bits of it all over the room, making it look like a serious struggle had occurred. Smiling, the apprehensive character glanced back to his accomplice.
So, are we ready to begin?
Almost. We still need to figure out a hiding place for you.
He glanced around the room for a moment.
I know we can streak the blood across the floor and make it look like I hid your body in the closet. During the prank, though, you can hide in the bathroom, so that if anyone looks in the closet, you won't be there.
A sly smile graced both of their expressions as they set up the rest of the scene, until the negative trait gave his two-fingered salute and headed into the bathroom to hide. That left Roman to begin the prank, the goal of which was to make the others believe that Virgil had failed to uphold his end of the truce. An argument had ensued, which had escalated to the point of violence, leading him into a blackout moment of rage, in which he had accidentally slain his former ally. Now with the stage set, it was just a matter of getting the others to take notice, and since they wanted them to find out one at a time, knocking wouldn't do. Instead, he pulled his phone from his pocket to call for aid from their first real victim, Patton. Dialing the number into his phone, he was thankful for his copious years of acting experience. They would be sorely needed in the event to come.
Hello?
He let his voice rise as a panicked whisper.
Patton, I need your help. I really messed up. Help me.
What's wrong, kiddo?
Judging by his tone, Morality really believed that there was something amiss. He allowed his voice to crack a few times for effect.
Just come into my room. Don't tell anyone else. I really messed up, Pat.
Okay, I'll be there soon.
Please hurry.
Princey hung up the phone, to hear snickering coming from the bathroom.
Shh, dead people don't laugh, Hot Topic.
After a moment, the giggling ceased, and it wasn't long before the father figure rushed in, but he didn't yet see the blood.
What's wrong, son?
He led his friend further into the room, gesturing to the red goo smeared all over the floor.
What do I do?
The ethical trait's voice shook with fear.
Is that blood?
Keep your voice down. You can't tell anyone.
What?
His colleague looked horrified.
What happened? Why is there blood everywhere? How?
Shh.
He placed his hands in front of him, trying to get the other to quiet down.
Stop yelling. You can't tell anyone about this.
What happened?
For the time being, Patton lowered his voice.
Are you okay?
Huh? Oh, yeah, I'm fine. It's Virgil.
The usually cheery aspect appeared almost sick with fear.
Then we need to call 911 or Thomas or something. I don't know.
No. We can't tell anyone.
What about Logan? Is he home?
Roman shook his head.
I don't know. Maybe. But you can't tell him.
Morality stepped back, away from the blood.
We have to tell somebody.
No.
Yes!
His friend yelled now.
Logan, come here, help!
No, stop. Don't tell him. Do not tell Logan.
He pretended to be short of breath.
Just come here.
He led the eldest Bassett closer to the crime scene, speaking at the speed of light.
Virgil and I came here to discuss prank ideas when he broke the truce. He broke the alliance, and everything was fine, but then he pushed me, so I pushed him back, then one thing led to another, and I blacked out and woke up to see my sword covered in blood!
Sword? Roman, we have to tell someone.
Patton was almost shaking now.
We need to call 911 or something.
No, don't!
Logan, help!
Stop! Lower your voice! Stop!
No, we need to call someone.
No, just help me!
No! We can't handle this alone.
Morality turned back towards the door.
Logan, come on now!
Please just stop!
Seriously, we need to call 911 now. Virgil can go to the hospital as Thomas again.
His words were accompanied by the sound of a door opening, but it wasn't the one to the bathroom.
Logan, look!
No, get out!
As he said the words, he attempted to guide Logic back out, but he had already seen the carnage and pushed back.
Get out now!
Patton sounded even more panicked than before.
Logan, there's blood and Virgil, and I don't know what to do.
Leave! Get out!
The intellectual took hold of Princey's arm with a surprisingly strong grip to stop the shoving.
No, just go!
It's Virgil and...
Logan had placed himself between him and Patton.
It's Virgil?
No, it's not Virgil!
Yes, call 911!
No!
Where's Virgil?
Logic gestured for everyone to stop.
Hold on for a moment.
He turned to face the fanciful attribute.
Where is Virgil?
When he stayed silent, the analyst spoke more firmly.
Roman, where is Virgil?
He's in the closet.
Patton started for the closet door.
We have to help him!
No!
Roman grabbed his arm, trying to pull him away from the door.
No! Just stop! No.
Just as he began to pull harder, a force against his throat stopped his words, and a well-timed kick to the back of the knee brought both Roman and Logan to the ground. In just 2 moves, the latter had managed to put the prior into such a strong chokehold that he couldn't breathe. Morality opened the closet door.
Where is he?
At the same time as the closet door was opened, Virgil walked out of the bathroom as if nothing had happened. He glanced over to the 2 on the floor.
What's going on?
The grip on his neck loosened slightly, but Logic still refused to let go of the creative side completely, and for a moment everyone stared at anxiety in a stunned silence. Eventually, the moral facet rushed over to his darker counterpart, sobbing.
Virgil, you're alive! How badly are you hurt?
He rested a hand on Patton's shoulder.
I'm not. All of this is just an act.
Princey pushed Logic's arms off of his shoulders and scrambled away, panting.
You were killing me! I couldn't breathe!
Virgil was laughing as he watched over the footage from the secret camera they had set up.
Damn. Logan went WWE and just put you on the ground. No remorse.
Roman took in a ragged breath.
Logan, I couldn't breathe! You were killing me!
He stood up, coughing violently.
I couldn't freaking breathe!
You literally had him in a chokehold. Nice one, Specs.
Logic got to his feet, straightening his glasses.
I thought you were going to try and hurt Patton too, so I stopped you in the most efficient way I could think of in a moment.
Morality looked between the 2 who had masterminded the whole scene.
Wait, this was a prank?
Shame crashed over the whimsical side, and he shared a guilty look with his accomplice, as they both realized for the first time that they had managed to overstep their bounds. His voice cracked with sadness.
What was it?
The 2 of them simply nodded.
I am aware that I do not often understand humor, but I think I speak for both myself and Patton when I say, that was not funny.
How could you guys even joke about that when it's almost happened before for real?
Virgil visibly winced at the comment, putting his hand up to his stomach.
Oh god, I didn't even think of that.
Logan glared at both of them.
What if Patton had called 911 or gone to get Thomas? What if he had broken into a panic attack then and there? What if the situation had played out any different than it did? What would you 2 have done then?
He took a deep breath, calming his tone.
What makes the situation all the more real is that you 2 are under a truce because your alliance would end like this without it. That being said,
He turned to face Virgil alone.
I'm requesting that we instate a new rule. For the safety of all of us, there can be no more alliances.
The youngest trait didn't even hesitate.
I allow it. No more alliances.
He turned to look at Patton.
I'm sorry. We should have realized this prank would hit too close to home. So, I apologize.
As do I.
Roman moved to stand next to his former ally.
We should have thought all of this through a little better.
He looked over to Logan.
So much so that I'm not requiring you to apologize for putting me into a chokehold.
Both the moral and logical aspects dipped their heads respectfully at the apologies, but it was the latter who spoke.
No hard feelings. And just because I feel the need to clarify this, if the situation were changed in any way, I would have done the same thing to Virgil or Patton. So don't feel singled out by that.
I don't. Once you said you thought I was going to hurt Patton, I understood why you did it.
He shrugged slightly.
Would have done the same.
In that case, it is much too late for all this excitement. I'm going to get ready for bed.
Logic headed for the door.
Have a good night, you three.
They also bid farewell to Morality for the evening, leaving the two who had pulled the prank alone. Anxiety looked at the mess on the floor.
Do you want me to help you clean this up?
He shook his head.
No, you've been in my room too long already. Something tells me that you only did this prank because you were in here. You got swept up in the theatrics of it all. I think that's why Patton didn't panic sooner and why Logan was so brash. We really didn't think this one through.
The worrisome aspect nodded.
Agreed.
He held out a hand.
It was fun being in an alliance, but we have to go back to being enemies again. It is the rule now.
Roman shook his hand firmly.
All good things have to come to an end. But you're right. It was fun being creative.
Virgil smiled.
And ruthless.
He started for the door, but stopped on his way out.
Oh, I forgot about this.
He chuckled nervously.
We should have come up with a better team name.
He gazed at his friend in confusion.
Why so?
Logan told me yesterday that Princeofthegays is our ship name.
His eyes grew wide at the revelation, but he wasn't expecting what was said next.
Now how Logan knew that, I will never know.
He paused for a moment.
Scratch that. I'm not sure I want to know.
And with that, he made his way back to his own room. Date, April 15th, 2019. Despite no longer having a truce in place, and rather an explicit rule stating that there were no longer allowed to be alliances, Roman felt guilty at the idea of pranking his former ally. Still, he knew the only way to convince Logan and Patton that they had truly severed their pact would be to prank one another. That being said, he wasn't going to give Virgil the upper hand in that regard, especially when he had such a devious idea. During the alliance, Anxiety may have been the ruthless one, but he could be pretty unforgiving as well. He just needed to play his cards right. Currently, his friend was in the shower, attempting once again to wash the hot pink dye from his hair, leaving a window of opportunity for the prince to set up his joke. Knowing that, he swiftly entered Virgil's room, took his beloved patchwork jacket from his bed, and silently made his escape with it. The fight-or-flight reflex adored his jacket, to the point that he refused to go anywhere or do anything without it. Even when he was just laying around the Mind Palace, or on the hottest days Florida had to offer, he always shut down the idea of taking it off. He would be devastated if he somehow managed to lose the coat, which is why the creative side had recreated it after it was destroyed a few months back. Understanding his companion's attachment to the jacket and what it represented would make destroying it a low blow, even for him. Still, he had a plan to make his colleague think it had been ruined, when really it would remain safely in his own room until the prank had run its course. For all intents and purposes, however, Virgil was going to watch his precious jacket burn. It wouldn't be the real jacket, of course, but rather a pile of the extra fabric that Princey had held onto after making it. He was going to wait until his friend was at the height of his search before setting the jacket ablaze in the backyard. Putting everything into place, including a bucket of water to put the fire out if things were to go south, he headed back inside. It wasn't long before he heard his former ally's voice.
Hey Patton, are you washing my jacket?
Morality's confused tone quickly followed.
No, although it probably needs it. Why?
Anxiety started down the stairs, looking surprisingly frail and a lot less intimidating without the aid of his oversized jacket.
I thought I left it on my bed when I went to take a shower, but now I can't find it anywhere.
Could Amaya have taken it?
Logan's voice joined the fray as Roman headed for his backyard.
Seeing as Amaya is on a smaller end of the spectrum for a Norwegian forest cat, it is unlikely that she would be able to move it far.
As the others were talking inside, the prankster doused the pile of fabric in lighter fluid and struck a match to life. When he dropped it, the jacket lit up almost instantly, forcing the prince to jump out of the proximity of the flames. A moment later, Virgil's worried tone echoed from inside.
Is that a fire?
Within seconds, he was outside with wide eyes, which somehow grew even wider as he realized what was burning.
Is that my jacket? Put it out!
His shouts drew the others' attention, and as the fire grew, the fanciful trait was forced to dump the bucket of water over the fire before it could spread to the house. When they all looked back, all that was left was a wet pile of charred fabric. The worrisome aspect turned to face him, a look of horror in his eyes.
Roman, was that my jacket?
He laughed as he responded.
I thought it was a bit too dark, so I lit it up for you.
What?
Anxiety picked up one of the blackened patches, which all but fell apart at the slightest touch. He stared down at it, almost teary-eyed.
My jacket?
He turned to look at the prankster.
Am I just supposed to go back to wearing my black and gray hoodie now?
I guess so.
His friend narrowed his eyes.
What happened to so you can leave behind the monochromatic hues of your past?
Roman shrugged, pretending that the reminder of what the jacket stood for didn't claw at his resolve.
Well, the purple didn't really match your hair anymore, so...
My hair isn't going to be pink forever!
He looked back to the smoldering pile.
Did you make another one? Is this the joke?
Princey shook his head.
What the hell?
He shouted over his shoulder as he stormed back inside.
That's not funny.
He paused halfway up the stairs.
Hold on. That's against the rules. Don't break or mess up anything you can't replace.
I can replace it, I just don't have to until the end of the prank war.
The negative facet stared at him with a mix of shock, hurt, and anger.
You'd better have a new jacket ready the day I choose to end the prank war.
He was back in his room before anyone else had a chance to speak, but after a moment of silence, Patton piped up.
You know what that jacket symbolizes, and how much he cares about it.
He looked at the pile of ashes.
Don't you think that prank hit a little too close to home, kiddo?
No.
His response received stunned glares, so he continued.
No, because he left before I could tell him. That's not actually his jacket.
Logic straightened his glasses.
Pray tell, what did you burn?
Leftover fabric I had from remaking the jacket a few months ago.
He glanced towards the back door.
The jacket is resting safely in my room.
Logan blinked at him a few times.
I'll admit that is clever, but you should probably go tell Virgil that.
Heading back inside, Roman retrieved the patchwork hoodie from his room and called out to his friend from the corridor.
Hey, Virg, come here!
His voice echoed from beyond the threshold.
What do you want? To gloat more over your not-so-funny prank?
He stopped abruptly as he threw the door open, and his eyes rested on the jacket.
Wait. What?
Did you really think that I was gonna burn one of your prized possessions?
He chuckled softly.
No, even I'm not that mean.
He held the coat out to his companion.
Here, this is yours.
Slowly, anxiety put the jacket around his shoulders, as if he were still worried it would crumble into ash. Once he had it on, though, he seemed to become more comfortable, and returned to being his gloomy and intimidating self.
Wait, if this is my jacket, then what were you burning outside? Because that sure looked like my jacket.
The prince smiled.
I still had some extra fabric from recreating your jacket a while back, so I burned that, and kept the actual jacket safe in my room.
His colleague actually chuckled a bit.
I'll give you this. That was a good prank.
Just as he said the words, Morality's voice echoed from the first floor.
Now you know it hasn't been destroyed, do you want me to wash your jacket?
No!
He darted back for his room.
No one else is touching this until the prank war's over. It's mine!
Date: April 21st, 2019. Logan had gone through the upcoming scenario 100 times, just to ensure that his next practical joke was within the parameters of the prank war. Even though Virgil had added a no-animal rule, his exact words on the matter had been rather vague. He had clearly stated that pets are now off-limits, but logic had found a loophole. Though it did involve Amaya, the prank was well within the guidelines that had been set. The joke was meant to cause anxiety or worry, but his furry companion would remain safe and unchanged. The intellectual knew well that his colleague would do anything for the feline he had rescued, a fact which had become apparent when the negative aspect had secured the mindscape of any threat to her multiple times. That included putting up a barrier that prevented the kitten from entering the deeper mind palace, where she could be harmed by the nightmares that resided there, or get lost in the darkened corridors, which was where his trick began. It would be a difficult task, but he was going to convince his friend that Amaris had somehow managed to disappear, which included taking down the barrier. He had, of course, taken extensive precautions to ensure that the cat would remain in a secret location, where she would be both safe and comfortable. From the predicament the sides had found themselves in on Halloween, the academic recalled clearly where the fight-or-flight reflex had run into him, only a few feet from his dreamscape. That would be Amaya's hiding place, as she would be surrounded by things which would remind her of her owner to keep her calm. Meanwhile, he had gathered everything essential to keep her in good health until he personally went to retrieve her. Having planned everything out, he knew that he had to act quickly. His worrisome counterpart was asleep for the time being, and the others had busied themselves with their daily tasks, but that wouldn't last long. Taking his chances, he gently lifted the purring feline from where she had been resting on the back of the sofa, and with a wave of his hand, lowered the barrier. Confidently, he made his way through the winding halls until he reached the dark gray door patterned with purple accents, which marked the entrance to Virgil's dreamscape. Setting the animal down, he checked again that her food and water bowls were full, and that she had an array of toys to keep her entertained while they were away. The prank would only last a few hours at most, so her provisions were more than what was necessary, but he wasn't going to take any chances with her safety. Stepping back out into the corridor, he placed the same barrier that usually resided at the entrance to the Deeper Mind Palace on the threshold of the room, in case any nightmares were to come by. Returning to the common room, all that was left was a waiting game, so he pretended to bury himself in a book, waiting until someone took notice of Amaya's disappearance. It was another half an hour before anxiety groggily stumbled down the stairs.
Hey Specs, anything exciting happen while I was asleep?
He glanced up from the pages.
Not to my knowledge. Roman is currently rehearsing in his room, and last I saw, Patton was doing laundry.
Clearly contented by the confirmation that nothing had gone awry during his slumber, he made his way into the kitchen. It wasn't until he heard the familiar sound of food being placed in a metal bowl that he realized the prank would soon begin. Virgil yawned as he poured food into Amaya's bowl, but was confused when he didn't hear the jangling of her collar, which normally indicated that she was darting over to eat. The last time that had occurred, his poor pet had been turned green. He clearly remembered setting a no animals rule after the incident, so if she was being pranked again, somebody was going to pay dearly for it. Glancing back into the commons, he called out to Logan.
Have you seen Amaris anywhere? She didn't run down when I filled her bowl.
His companion wore a perplexed expression, a look which sent a chill down his spine.
I can't say I have. I assumed she was asleep in your room.
He was fairly certain he hadn't seen the feline in his room. But just to be safe, he started back in that direction to double-check. Entering his corner of the mindscape, he called out Amaya's name. When there was no response, he even took the liberty of checking some of her favorite hiding spots. But she was nowhere to be found. Worried as to where his precious pet had wandered off to, he forced himself to remain calm for the time being, at least until he had checked with the others. Sometimes when morality was upset, he would take Amaris into his room. He normally said when he was doing this, but perhaps he hadn't wanted to wake the darker character, so he moved to the light blue door. Knocking yielded an almost immediate response.
Hey, Virg, what's up?
He took a deep breath.
I can't find Amaris. I was wondering if you had seen her.
He didn't miss the father figure's worried tone.
No, and I'm taking you've already checked your room? Have you asked Logan or Roman?
I spoke with Logan downstairs. He said he hasn't seen her, and I doubt she would be in Prince's room.
He joined the other in the corridor.
It's worth a try.
Together they moved to the red and white door, awaiting its opening. A slightly disgruntled Prince answered their call.
Can't this wait? I'm in the middle of rehearsing.
Patton stepped forward.
Sorry to interrupt, but Amaya has gone missing, and we're wondering if you've seen her.
The air of displeasure evaporated, leaving apprehension in its place.
Not that I know of. And you would only be checking my room if you already cleared the rest of the Mind Palace.
He appeared thoughtful for a moment.
Thomas pulled a prank on her before. Do you think he would break the rules and do it again?
His words came out as a growl.
If he has, he's going to regret it.
The three of them gazed down the steps.
Do you know if Thomas took Amaria again?
The teacher put his book down.
I'm not certain, but we could go ask if he has seen her.
Sharing a glance, the four of them synced into the real world, and the moment they caught sight of the sides, Thomas, Joan, and Talyn fell silent. Eventually, their host found his voice.
Hey guys, is something wrong?
The youngest trait held his gaze.
Amaria has gone missing, and we're wondering if you had seen her.
They all wore expressions of confusion, but it was Talyn who spoke.
I could be wrong, but aren't pets off limits?
Virgil took a deep breath.
Yes, they are. Which is why I'm praying for all your sakes that no one has tried to prank her.
Thomas glanced at his friends before stepping forward.
I learned my lesson the first time, so you can rest assured I didn't mess with her.
He paused.
That being said, I know Joan and Talyn can call on you, but they can't physically go to the Mind Palace, so they couldn't have her.
He held his host's gaze.
And you swear you didn't go get her for them?
On my life.
The certainty in the voice of the online personality sent a shiver down his spine. No one knew where Amaria was. He cast one final glance over the ones before him.
She must still be in the Mind Palace, then. She's probably just sleeping somewhere.
Fear chilled his heart.
I guess I'll go back and look for her again.
He didn't even bother looking at the other sides before sinking into the mindscape once more, determined to find his furry companion. The initial suspicion that her disappearance could be a prank was greatly diminished when all three of the others opened their bedroom doors as he called Amaya's name. If she had been inside any of them, she would have darted to his side, or if she had been trapped, she would have meowed for him. The air of concern that began to engulf his colleagues wasn't lost on him as their search reached an hour. Virgil was heading back to the kitchen to see if putting food in her bowl again would yield a different result when something caused him to stop. Something was missing, but at first he struggled to discern what it was. After glancing around a few times, he realized that the change wasn't something he could see, but he could feel. Freezing in place, he walked over to the entrance which led to the deeper Mind Palace, and with a tentative hand, reached out for the barrier, which both kept the nightmares out and Amaria in. His heart almost stopped as his hand passed through the threshold with no resistance. Something had happened to the barrier, and since they had checked everywhere else, the youngest side could only assume that his pet was somewhere within the winding corridors. He shuddered to think of what could happen to her if the others, or worse, the nightmares, managed to get a hold of her. He took a few paces forward, but a hand on his shoulder stopped him from going any further. Turning around, he was faced with a concerned Patton.
Don't panic, Virg. We'll find her.
He attempted to slow his breathing with little success.
I think Amaria got into the deeper Mind Palace.
His friend took on a sudden look of fear.
What makes you think that?
The barrier I put up to keep her safe is gone. I don't know who could have removed it, but...
As he trailed off, Morality finished his statement.
Since we checked everywhere else, she must be out there somewhere.
Before a response could be made, the one before him whipped around.
Logan, Roman, can you come here, please?
It only took a moment for the two of them to appear from the second floor, but it was Princey who spoke.
Did you find her?
Anxiety could feel himself beginning to shake, but pushed away his worry. He wasn't going to be any help to his beloved companion if he was panicking.
No, we haven't.
He glanced back at the darkened halls before continuing.
We think she managed to get into the deeper Mind Palace.
Logic appeared confused.
Amaria has never attempted to enter the corridors before. Why would you do so now?
She hasn't tried before because I put a barrier up to keep her here.
He wanted to dart off into the corridors to try and find her, but he waited.
Who knows what would happen if she was caught by the others, or the...
He trailed off, but the whimsical trait placed a hand on his shoulder.
If we're going to find her, we just need to look.
The one in question cast his gaze to the threshold.
We can cover more ground if we split up. We can all go in different directions to try to find her.
The analyst straightened his glasses.
Pray tell, if one of us were to find Amaria, how would we alert the others? None of us need to spend any more time in those halls than we have to.
Silence filled the air until the fight-or-flight reflex couldn't bear it any longer.
we all go in different directions and walk for an hour. At the end of the hour, we all go back to the real world so we can reappear in the commons. If one of us finds Amaya before the hour's up, we bring her back to the commons and wait for the others to come back. Does that work for everyone?
What if we find ourselves face to face with the nightmares?
The father figure seemed to shiver at the mere thought of the apparitions.
We're no help to Amaya if we're in danger.
Virgil let his eyes flicker over all of them.
If you run into the nightmares, go back to the real world and then to the commons. Take a moment to collect yourself and then go back into the deeper mind palace in a different direction until the hour is up.
They all nodded in agreement to the words, and after retrieving a few flashlights, the four of them shared one last glance before heading off in different directions. Logan had made a point to take the path that would lead him past Virgil's dream space, so he could check on Amaya, and make sure she was faring well as the prank went on. Soon enough he had gotten to the door, but pulled his hand back from the handle when what felt like an electric shock made his arm feel almost numb. Sighing, he realized that he needed to take down the barrier he had placed to get into the room, and a moment later he could turn the handle without being shocked. Stepping inside, he ensured that the door closed behind him, and a moment later a black and green cat came darting up to him. Kneeling down, he petted the fur between Amaya's ears gently before checking on her provisions. She still had plenty of food and water, but had somehow managed to claw her bed to ribbons. Waving his hand, the bed stitched itself back together, and the small feline didn't seem fazed by the lack of object permanence as she climbed back into it, before curling up and tucking her nose under her tail. He stroked her multicolored fur a few more times before leaving her to sleep as he continued his search. He made sure that the barrier was put back into place before he began making his way even deeper into the labyrinth that was composed of the seemingly endless corridors. Part of him wished he had brought a book to read as he walked, seeing as his time wasn't actually being taken up by something since he already knew where Amaya was. At the same time, he realized such a distraction could prove dangerous to him, as it would make him less perceptive of any approaching phantoms. After so many turns, multiple flights of stairs, and walking for what felt like miles, he reached a doorway which caught his eye, but after a moment of looking it over, he stumbled back from it. Even though he had never entered the area beyond the threshold, he knew it was a shadowed mirror of the commons, but inside were the dark sides. The last thing he needed right now was to begin any form of conversation, or worse, get into an altercation with any of them, so he swiftly retreated. He had managed to put some distance between himself and the entrance to the dark side's commons when his phone went off, signaling that the hour to search had finished. He wondered if his negative counterpart had thought to check his own dream space for his pet, and if he hadn't, how he would react when they all returned empty-handed. Taking a deep breath, he sinked into the real world, and since no one was in sight, he quickly returned to the common room before anyone could see him. As it turned out, he was the last to return from their expedition, and he could see that anxiety was already pacing nervously. Apparently, he hadn't thought to check his dream space. As soon as the intellectual appeared, the darkly dressed aspect rounded on him.
Did you find her?
He shook his head solemnly.
I saw no sign of her.
All of the others appeared worried, but none more than Virgil, who darted back for the deeper mind palace, only to be pulled back by Roman.
Virg, you're in no state to go back in there.
Their friend was shaking.
I have to find her.
Princey waited for him to look up.
And we will. There's a chance she found her way back here while we were all looking for her. So let's go take another look around before we try to go back into those corridors.
It was clear that the youngest Facet was trying desperately to regain his composure, as he nodded in agreement, allowing the creative and moral attributes to guide him up the stairs. Having seen the state that his companion was in, Logan decided it was time to bring the prank to a close. So while the others searched their rooms, he slipped back into the darkened corridors. Walking swiftly so as to return before the others became suspicious, he traversed the now familiar path to Amaya's location and arrived in record time. Lowering the barrier, he opened the door and stepped inside to retrieve the feline and return her to the owner who had missed her so sorely. Her food and water bowls still held most of her provisions, but she had managed to once again destroy her bed. Sighing, he waved his hand to clear everything away and knelt down, placing a hand on the floor. She looked at him for a moment, but the cat eventually walked up his arm and was soon lying around his shoulders. Certain that she would be safe with him, he left the room, and began making his way to the commons as Amaris nibbled at his ear. Growing closer to the exit, he could hear the others.
We have to go back and look for her.
She perked her ears up at the sound of her owner's voice. Patton's soft tone was quick to follow.
We will find her, but we can't just rush in blind.
Roman sounded as concerned as the eldest character.
Patton's right. We'll be no good to Amaris if we're too panicked to look properly. We need to make a game plan.
You guys make a game plan. I'm gonna go find my cat and...
Virgil stopped as Logan came around the corner, and he caught sight of the feline draped over his shoulders.
You found Amaris!
He didn't miss the looks of relief in the other's eyes as well, but at the sound of her name, the cat jumped from his shoulders to the back of the couch. From there, she darted over to Anxiety, who picked her up, and by the looks of it, he was burying his face in her fur to hide his tears from them. All the while, she purred loudly, clearly pleased to be back in the arms of the one who had rescued her so long ago. After a few moments, he lifted his head, allowing her to climb up onto his shoulders, and it appeared that the other two who weren't in on the joke now felt comfortable to move forward and pet her black and green pelt. When they stepped away, with Amaris still draped across him, the gloomier side put the barrier back to separate them all from the deeper mind palace. After a moment, he turned to face the intellectual.
How did you find her?
I stumbled across her while you all were searching the second floor.
He was cut off as Amaris did something he had never witnessed her do. She hissed in his direction. The one holding her appeared almost as shocked as he was, but the cat merely had her eyes trained on logic before looking back to her owner. He wasn't sure what he expected to happen next, but what happened was not it. Virgil quickly let his eyes snap back to the academic, his voice a low growl.
You didn't just find her, did you?
The other two looked between them in shock.
Here's a warning for all of you. Good luck lying to me with Amaris around, because sometimes I swear she knows what we're saying. I don't know if she can just sense emotions or what, but she has this innate ability to alert me if something isn't right.
He locked eyes with the second eldest trait.
So, knowing that, I'm going to change my question from how did you find her to what did you do with her?
I'm certain I have no idea what you're talking about. I merely found her.
He was once again cut off by a soft hiss from the black and green feline. This time, the fight-or-flight reflex waited to speak, letting his hand rest on the back of the sofa so Amaris could get down. She did, but stayed close to her owner's side.
Logan, I will ask one more time. What the hell did you do with my cat?
Before he could formulate an answer, Anxiety spoke again.
Be careful how you word your answer.
He thought about trying to get around admitting that he had pulled any pranks, but it appeared that as long as Virgil's faithful companion was nearby, he wasn't going to be able to convince anyone.
She was kept in a remote location to inflict worry and fear for a short time.
Despite being incapable of understanding human speech or emotion, the cat looked at him with what appeared to be contempt in her green eyes, but she was no longer hissing. That being said, his colleague lowered his head, casting a shadow over his eyes.
I thought I made it explicitly clear that pets were now off limits.
You will find that my joke was well within the parameters of such a rule.
His words received confused glances, so he continued.
You specifically said, pets are now off limits, but I didn't prank Amaris. I pranked you. Yes, Amaris may have been the source of this joke. However, you will find that she remains safe and unchanged. I made sure to take extensive precautions to ensure that she was returned to you in the same condition as she was before I took her. She was left with food, water, toys, and a bed in a room which I secured with the same barrier that you used to close off the deeper mind palace.
The anger that remained in Virgil's eyes unnerved him slightly.
Where did you put her exactly?
He made a point to maintain his professional demeanor.
I recalled the location from the issues we ran into on Halloween, so I placed her in your dream space.
Anxiety's glare didn't waver, and the usually sweet feline remained close to his side.
She remains unchanged, you say?
He nodded in agreement to the words.
Then why is she sticking to me like glue? Don't get me wrong, she prefers to be in the presence of others. But when she isn't draped around someone's shoulders, She doesn't usually stay so close.
Logan hadn't noticed the detail until it was pointed out to him, but he had no chance to defend himself, as the observant aspect continued.
Let me ask you this. When you went back to get her from my dream space, had anything changed from the way it had been left?
He thought for a moment.
She had eaten some of her food.
He paused briefly, still confused by what he had seen.
I saw her twice since I took her. I checked on her once while we were searching the deeper mind palace, and also when I went to retrieve her. Both times, however, she had managed to...
Let me guess. Completely destroyed her bed?
Logic struggled to find his words for a moment, something which was odd for him, to say the least.
Yes. How did you know?
Anxiety ran his hand down her back a few times before responding.
She does that when she's in emotional distress, as well as sticking close to me.
He, along with Roman and Patton, appeared confused, so he continued.
Animals can become distressed when they are separated from their owners, especially if they're rescues, because they think they're never going to see their owner again. It's actually a fairly common condition in most house pets. And do you know what it's called?
They all shook their heads.
Then Amaya understands what this prank war is about better than any of you.
How so?
He glanced over to Princey.
Because when an animal becomes distressed due to being separated from their owner,
his gaze turned back to Logic.
It's called separation anxiety.
Virgil made a point to keep his glare on Logan. He didn't appreciate anyone upsetting his cat, who had already been through so much. Before he could speak, however, the one under his gaze piped up, sounding uncertain.
But I made a point to put her in your dream space so as not to cause her emotional distress.
He rolled his eyes.
You know what wasn't in my dream space?
He pretended to think for a moment.
Oh yeah, me.
He took a small step forward.
The owner who she was afraid she was never going to see again.
Despite claiming not to feel emotion, the eyes of the factual persona had grown wide with fear.
I apologize. I thought I had taken all the appropriate precautions to keep Amaya safe and comfortable.
He took another small step towards the analyst, who had begun to back away. He also didn't miss the concerned glances that passed between the other two.
I don't care about your technicalities. You technically broke one of the rules.
As Logan backed into the wall, and both Roman and Patton tentatively began moving forward to break up the potential altercation, he allowed a knowing smile to grace his lips.
The prank war is officially over.
His reaction caused everyone to freeze in their tracks, but it was the prince who was eventually brave enough to speak up.
Are you ending the prank war because of your cat?
Virgil turned to face his whimsical counterpart, who jumped away.
No. If this were just about Amaya, I would keep her tucked away safely in my room until the prank war was over.
He glanced around at all of them.
I ended the prank war because you all learned what you were supposed to from it.
We did?
Logic was still pressed against the wall despite the change of tone in the conversation.
Yes.
He moved to the center of the group.
Just then, you were all worried.
He looked at Logic.
You feared you had overstepped, broken a rule, and potentially would have to face the consequences of such an action.
He glanced over to Princey and Morality.
You two weren't sure how that situation was about to go down. You know that you can trust me these days, so you hesitated to jump in. But when you thought I had Logan pinned and would potentially strike him, you moved to stop me. Even then, however, you were afraid that I might redirect my anger onto you two, so you second-guessed your actions.
He looked around at all of them.
In that moment, you had to analyze the situation and the threats that could be posed to you or someone else. You were faced with the potential of having broken bonds and trust with someone close to you. Most importantly, however, you understood what it feels like to always need to be looking over your shoulder, suspecting those around you to be at fault, and wondering if you yourself have gone too far. You have to make hasty decisions that you are uncertain of to stop what could have happened, despite knowing just how unlikely it was.
He chuckled softly.
You guys said you wanted to know what it's like to be me, and now I've shown you. So, the prank war is officially over.
The three of them looked at him, stunned, but it was the ethical trait who moved forward.
You feel like that all the time?
He nodded.
Pretty much.
Jeez.
The visionary aspect blinked at him in shock.
No wonder you're so tired all the time. All your energy goes into worrying.
Once again, he nodded in agreement, but the logical facet finally found his voice.
It would seem that we are all seeing life from a new perspective, and one that you face constantly.
He took a deep breath.
So if that was the goal of this prank war of yours, I would say that you have succeeded.
He straightened his tie.
Despite the prank war being officially over, I still feel it necessary to once again apologize for what has happened with Amaya.
You really do get what it's like to be me if you of all people are apologizing twice.
He smiled lightly.
Either way, I accept your apology, Specs.
There was a moment of silence before the prince piped up again.
It might be a bit too soon to bring this up, but overall, the prank war was fun. Perhaps we could have another one sometime.
Logic was the one to respond.
It also appears to me that it was a therapeutic exercise, as we have all been able to settle disputes with one another in a semi-physical fashion, without any long-term consequences.
The cheerful figment bounced up onto his toes.
I would be up for another prank war!
He barely had time to get the words out before Thomas appeared.
Courtesy of Joan, Talyn, and I.
As he disappeared, 3 fans with flour dumped into the motors turned on, covering them all in the white powder. Logic attempted to clear his glasses.
2 things.
He placed his semi-clean spectacles back on the bridge of his nose.
1, we should probably tell the 3 of them that the prank war is over.
He huffed.
And 2, Joan and Talyn can't come to the mindscape, so Thomas is going to have to clean up this mess alone.
They all smiled at one another at the realization, but Virgil was still thinking of their previous conversation.
We can have another prank war later on to get the 3 of them back for this. But with some of the ideas I have in mind, it will be bigger and better. A mega prank war.